Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm David.
And I'm Maria.
It's really good to have you here today.
Yeah.
How you doing? Ready to get into something, well, something pretty heavy, I think.
I'm doing great. And yes, I am so ready. I've got, my coffee, my notes are practically a book for this one. This topic, it's one of those where you feel like it explains everything.
Right.
And then you dig in and realize, oh, no, it's actually just a mystery inside another mystery.
I love those. It's funny you say that. I was just sitting here before we started recording, and I was looking at my hand, at this gold ring I wear.
Mm-hmm.
Had it for years. Barely even notice it's there most of the time, It's just part of me. But the light caught it, and I had this really strange thought, like, where did this actually come from?
That's a very good question.
And I don't mean the store. I mean the atoms themselves. Like, who dug this stuff out of the ground and when? 100 years ago? 1,000?
Was it part of a Roman coin? Or maybe an Inca earring?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whose story is wrapped up in this little piece of metal on my finger?
That is, well, it's a profound question, because that ring, it's not just a piece of jewelry. If you trace the history of those atoms, you're looking at a story that's literally older than our planet.
Older than the Earth.
And a human history that's probably bloodier, more complicated, and, more world-changing than almost any other object you could possibly own.
That is exactly the rabbit hole we're going down today. We're doing the full, unvarnished history of gold. We're calling this one the Gilded Thread.
And it really is a thread, isn't it? It connects, everything. Ancient gods, the birth of money, the destruction of entire civilizations.
And even, the price of milk at the grocery store today. It all connects back.
It explains the fundamental shape of our modern economy.
So, to really set the stage, I want to start with a moment that feels like it's straight out of a movie, like Indiana Jones, but this really happened. November 26th, 1922.
Oh, this is the moment. Howard Carter.
Howard Carter, in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. He's been digging for years. His funding is about to be cut by his patron, Lord Carnarvon. He's desperate.
It's his last chance, basically.
It is. And he finds this sealed doorway hidden under tons of rubble. He makes a tiny hole, just big enough to fit a candle through, and he peers into this darkness, into air that hasn't been breathed for over 3,000 years.
And Carnarvon is right behind him, just on pins and needles. I can just picture him, sweating, anxious, asking, can you see anything?
And Carter, who's just completely stunned by what he's seeing. The candlelight is just glinting and reflecting off of gold everywhere. He just whispers back, yes, wonderful things.
It still gives me goosebumps, just the thought of it.
Right. But here's the thing that really reframes that whole story, the thing you pointed out in our notes. We think of Tutankhamun as this, legendary pharaoh.
A-list celebrity of the ancient world.
But in his own time, he was kind of a nobody, right?
Totally. A minor pharaoh. He died young, maybe 18 or 19. He didn't really accomplish much. And yet his tomb, this minor king's tomb, was packed with gold. The death mask alone. Just the mask.
Yeah.
It's 11 kilograms of solid, pure gold.
11 kilos? That's what, 24, 25 pounds?
Just about. Imagine wearing a 25-pound helmet on your head. And this was for a minor king.
So the real question is, what were the great pharaohs buried with? Like Ramses the Great, before the tomb robbers got to them over the centuries.
The mind just boggles. It would have been unimaginable.
Okay, but here's the real scale check for today's deep dive. That 11 kilos in the mask, it's nothing. A drop in the ocean. Today, right now, as we're talking, there are about 216,000 metric tons of gold that humans have pulled out of the ground.
It's a number that's so big it's almost meaningless. It's hard to picture.
It is. It's worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $29 trillion. And almost every single ounce of it was dug up, fought over, melted down, and hoarded over the last 6,000 years of human history.
And the most incredible thing is gold is basically indestructible. It doesn't corrode. So that gold from Tutankhamun's mask, it's still out there. The atoms in your ring could very well have been mined by a Roman legionary 2,000 years ago. It just gets recycled over and over. It never goes away.
So that's our mission today. We're not just talking about treasure. We are tracing the financial and economic story of the world through this one unique metal.
Yep.
From its origins in space all the way up to August 15th, 1971. The day Richard Nixon basically changed the definition of money forever.
We're going to see that gold isn't just a shiny object. It's an active force in history. It drives empires. It causes inflation. It starts wars. It's the ghost in the machine of our whole financial world.
Okay, so let's start at the absolute beginning, part one. And I don't mean ancient Egypt. I mean, where does gold come from? Because the science on this is pretty mind-blowing. It's not made on Earth.
No, it is not. The alchemists in the Middle Ages wasted centuries trying to turn lead into gold, and it was never going to work. The physics are just impossible.
Why not?
Well, you need unbelievable amounts of energy and pressure to fuse atoms into something as heavy as gold. Even the core of our planet, which is incredibly hot and dense, yes, it doesn't have the juice.
So you need something more extreme.
You need a cataclysm, a cosmic level cataclysm. The scientific term you mentioned in the notes is a kilonova.
Which sounds bad.
It's about as violent as it gets in the universe. A kilonova is what happens when two neutron stars collide. And we have to pause on what a neutron star is.
All right.
It's not a star anymore. It's the collapsed, dead core of a giant star. It is so dense, so unbelievably dense, that a single teaspoon of it would weigh 1 billion tons.
1 billion tons in a teaspoon.
Right. So now imagine two of those things, these super dense zombie stars, spiraling into each other at nearly the speed of light, and then bang.
Wow.
The collision is so violent, it's like a cosmic forge. It literally smashes protons and neutrons together and creates all the heavy elements, heavier than iron, things like platinum, uranium, and gold, and then it sprays that material out across the galaxy.
Like cosmic shrapnel.
Exactly. So billions of years ago, somewhere out there, two dead stars collided, seeded a giant gas cloud with gold dust, and that cloud eventually collapsed to form our sun and our planets.
So my ring is literally made of stardust.
It is. It's ancient cosmic debris. It's fundamentally alien material. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
When the Earth first formed, it was just a giant ball of molten rock. And gold is very heavy, very dense. So almost all of that original gold from the cosmic cloud just sank.
Straight to the core.
Straight to the core. It's all down there, thousands of miles beneath our feet, totally inaccessible. We can never get to it.
So, the gold we have on the surface, the gold we can actually mine, where did that come from?
It was a late delivery, a top-up, basically. It arrived during a period astronomers call the Late Heavy Bombardment.
That also sounds bad.
It was. For about 4 billion years ago, the early Earth was just being pummeled by asteroids. And some of these asteroids had metallic cores, rich in gold. They slammed into the crust and deposited a new, thin layer of gold right on the surface.
So it was delivered by space rock.
Exactly. But even with that special delivery, it is just fantastically rare, which is the whole key to its value. The stat I saw was, what, 4 parts per billion in the Earth's crust?
Yeah. And to put that in perspective for you, it means that to get just 1 single ton of gold, you have to dig up and crush and process about 250,000 tons of rock.
The amount of energy and effort required is just monumental. It's unbelievably hard to get.
Which brings us to the big why.
Yeah.
Why did human beings, thousands of years ago, pick this specific metal to obsess over? I mean, iron is useful. You can make a plow. Copper is useful. Gold is. It's pretty, but it's soft. You can't make a good tool out of it.
No, if you made a sword out of gold, you'd lose your first fight very, very quickly. It's useless for survival. But it is perfect for psychology, and that all comes down to its unique chemistry.
It's a noble metal, right?
It's the noblest of them all, which means it's standoffish, it's aloof, it doesn't react with oxygen, iron turns to rust, silver tarnishes, copper turns green.
But gold just stays.
You can drop a gold coin in the ocean for 1,000 years, pull it out, wipe off the mud, and it will shine just as brightly as the day it was made. It's chemically indifferent to the passage of time.
And in an ancient world where everything decays, people die, food rots, buildings crumble, that must have seemed like magic.
It looked immortal. It looked divine. It has the same color and shine as the sun, this eternal object in the sky. So for early humans, holding gold wasn't just about being rich. It was about holding a piece of eternity.
It was a way to touch something that death couldn't touch.
Exactly. It was a bridge between the mortal and the divine.
Which leads us directly to the first civilization that really took this obsession and industrialized it. Ancient Egypt.
The land of gold. I mean, their actual word for gold was nub. And that's almost certainly where the name Nubia comes from, the region to the south in modern Sudan, which was their main source.
We have this image of, an old prospector panning for nuggets in a stream. But the reality of Egyptian gold mining was something else entirely.
Oh, it was brutal. A nightmare. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus visited these mines and wrote a description that is just chilling.
What did he say?
He described these deep, dark tunnels, the incredible heat, the prisoners of war and criminals who were forced to work them. He said they were worked so mercilessly, with no rest, that they welcomed death as far more to be desired than life.
Wow. That seems to be the dark side of this gilded thread, doesn't it? The beautiful object has this horrific backstory of human suffering.
Almost always. That's where the value comes from. In the ancient world, wealth was generated by that kind of brutal energy, but for the pharaohs, that suffering was an investment in geopolitical power.
It wasn't just for fancy necklaces.
Not at all. We have these amazing clay tablets, the Amarna letters, which are basically the diplomatic emails of the 14th century BCE.
Right.
And there are all these letters to the pharaoh from other kings in the Middle East, basically begging for gold. There's one from the king of Mitanni, and he just says, "Send me as much gold as I ask for in your country, gold is like dust."
Gold is like dust. That is the ultimate power move.
It really is. Egypt used its gold to buy allies, to bribe enemies, to keep the peace. It was the foundation of their foreign policy.
And it wasn't just Egypt. You see it everywhere in the ancient world. In the Bible, you have the story of the golden calf.
Which is such a fascinating story about value. The people get impatient waiting for Moses, so they melt down their jewelry, their tangible wealth, to create a physical god they can see and touch.
And then there's King Solomon, the gold standard, so to speak, for ancient wealth.
He is. The Bible says his income was 666 talents of gold a year.
Which, in modern terms, is what?
It's about 25 tons. Every single year. An absolutely staggering amount of wealth for that period.
Where did he get it from?
The text just says Ophir, but nobody knows where Ophir was. It's this legendary, mysterious source of gold, which is part of the mystique, right? Gold always comes from somewhere far away, somewhere dangerous and exotic.
Okay, so up to this point in history, gold is treasure, it's divine, it's a symbol of power. But it's not really money in the way we think of it. A farmer isn't buying his bread with a pinch of gold dust.
No, absolutely not. You're living in a barter economy. Or you're using what's called commodity money, so bushels of grain or salt. The word salary, in fact, comes from the Latin word sal, for salt.
But barter is just so inefficient for anything more than a tiny village economy.
It's terrible. You run into what economists call the double coincidence of wants.
Right. Explain that, because it's the fundamental problem that money solves.
Well, let's say I'm a shoemaker and I need a loaf of bread. I have to find a baker who happens to need a new pair of shoes right now.
And if he doesn't, if his shoes are fine, but he needs a new roof,
then I'm stuck. I have to find a roofer who needs shoes, trade my shoes for some roof tiles, and then take the tiles to the baker to trade for bread. It's a huge waste of time and energy. It grinds commerce to a halt.
And even if you use raw gold or silver, it's a pain. You have to weigh it for every single transaction. You have to test its purity.
Is this pure gold? Yeah. Or is it mixed with copper? You have to be a metallurgist just to buy dinner.
So the world needed a better system, a shortcut. And that leap forward happens in a kingdom called Lydia, in modern-day Turkey, around the 7th century BCE.
This is the story of King Croesus. Or really, it starts with his father, Eliades. They had a huge geographical advantage. The river Pactolus ran right through their kingdom, and it was filled with something called electrum.
Which is a mix of gold and silver, right? A natural alloy.
Exactly. So they had the raw material, but what they did with it was pure genius. They started taking lumps of this electrum of a standard weight, and they stamped them with the king's seal, a lion's head.
And the stamp is the key. That's the technological breakthrough.
The stamp is the entire revolution, because what does that stamp say? It's a message. It says, I, the king, guarantee that this lump weighs what it's supposed to weigh and is as pure as it's supposed to be.
So you don't need scales anymore. You don't need to test it. You just count them.
You're no longer trading metal. You're trading trust. You don't have to trust the merchant you're dealing with. You only have to trust the king who issued the coin.
And his son, Croesus, took it to the next level.
He did. He was apparently a brilliant metallurgist. He figured out a process to separate the gold from the silver in the electrum, and he created the world's first bimetallic currency, pure gold coins and pure silver coins, with a fixed exchange rate between them.
He literally invented money as we know it.
He did. Standardized government-issued currency, and he became legendarily wealthy from it. The phrase, rich as Croesus, is still with us today.
But as is often the case in these stories, the wealth went to his head.
It did. This is a classic Greek tragedy. He started eyeing the powerful Persian Empire next door, and he went to the famous oracle at Delphi for advice.
And the oracle gave him one of those classic tricky prophecies.
The oracle said, if you attack Persia, a great empire will fall.
And Croesus, being an optimist, assumed she meant the Persian Empire.
Of course. So he attacks, gets completely crushed by Cyrus the Great, and the empire that falls is his own.
But, and this is so important, the Persians, his conquerors, they didn't get rid of his invention.
No way! They looked at the system of coinage and thought, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It makes collecting taxes 100 times easier. It makes paying our soldiers simple. They adopted it and spread it across their vast empire.
And from there, it just takes over the world. The Greeks, Alexander the Great, the Romans.
The Roman solidus became the reserve currency of the ancient world. It was so stable, it was used for centuries, and it's the root of our word soldier, literally, one who is paid in solidi.
So by the time we get to the late Middle Ages, the mental link is unbreakable. Gold isn't just like money. Gold is money. It's power, which sets the stage for the most brutal and transformative chapter in this entire story.
The age of conquest.
The year is 1492. Columbus. We all learn the nursery rhyme, but we don't always focus on the motive.
No, he wasn't a pure explorer driven by curiosity. He was a man on a mission, backed by investors. He needed to show a profit. If you read his journals, the word gold appears more than 75 times. It's an obsession.
But Columbus was just the opening act. The real story, when it comes to gold, is Cortez in Mexico and Pizarro in Peru.
The conquistadors.
Yeah.
And the clash of civilizations that happens is just, it's almost impossible to comprehend because their value systems were so different. It was like two different species meeting.
You have the Aztecs, who had immense amounts of gold, but to them, it wasn't money. It was sacred. It was decorative.
Right. They called it Teoquitlau, which means divine excrement, the sweat or the tears of the gods. They thought it was beautiful, but they often valued things like rare jade or the green feathers of the quetzal bird more highly.
And then the Spanish arrive, and they have what they themselves called a disease of the heart, which can only be cured by gold.
That's a direct quote from Cortez. He wasn't even hiding it. And the looting that followed was just systematic cultural destruction. They took centuries of beautiful, intricate Aztec artwork, statues, masks, everything, and just melted it all down into crude bars.
Into ingots, to ship it back to Spain.
They turned a culture's soul into a commodity.
And then you have Pizarro's encounter with the Inca in Peru, which is somehow even more dramatic. The ransom of Atahualpa.
It's probably the single greatest ransom ever paid in history. Pizarro captures the Inca emperor, Atahualpa, and Atahualpa sees how obsessed these men are with the yellow metal, so he makes them an offer.
He says he'll fill a room with gold.
A huge room, about 22 by 17 feet. He promises to fill it with gold objects as high as he can reach once, and fill it with silver twice over.
And he does it.
He does. The Inca people bring treasures from all over the empire, something like 13,000 pounds of gold, an unbelievable fortune.
And the Spanish?
They take the gold, melt it all down, and then they execute Atahualpa anyway.
It's just pure brutality. But here is the critical economic question, the so what for the rest of the world. All this gold and silver floods back to Spain. You'd assume Spain is now set. They're the global superpower forever. They won the lottery.
But they didn't. In fact, it wrecked their economy. And it's a perfect illustration of a crucial economic lesson. It's called the price revolution.
How does getting a ton of money make you poorer? It seems counterintuitive.
Because money itself isn't wealth. Real wealth is goods and services. Food, ships, cloth, tools. If you suddenly dump a mountain of new money into an economy, but the number of goods for sale stays the same, what happens to prices?
Yeah, go up. Inflation.
Massive inflation. Prices in Europe basically tripled between 1500 and 1650. And Spain, which got the gold first, became the most expensive country in Europe.
So it was too expensive to make anything there.
Exactly. Why build a factory in Spain when you can just use your gold to buy cheaper goods from England or the Netherlands? So the gold flowed through Spain like water through a sieve.
And it ended up capitalizing the economies of their rivals.
Precisely. Spain did the dirty work of conquering and looting, but the wealth ended up funding the industrial and commercial growth of Northern Europe. It's one of the greatest ironies in economic history.
And we can't forget the human cost of that looting.
No, it was apocalyptic. As much as 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas was wiped out by disease and brutal forced labor in the mines. The silver mine at Potosi was nicknamed the mountain that eats men.
The foundations of the modern global economy were built on that.
They were.
Okay, let's jump forward a couple of centuries. The dynamic of gold discovery changes completely. It goes from state-sponsored conquest to mass hysteria. the 19th century gold rushes.
This is a total paradigm shift. It's not about armies and kings anymore. It's about the individual with a pickaxe and a dream.
It starts in California, 1848, James Marshall at Sutter's Mill.
Right. He sees something shiny in the water and says, it made my heart thump. But the real genius of the California gold rush wasn't Marshall. There's a guy named Sam Brannan.
Oh, I love the Sam Brannan story. He's the ultimate hustler.
He is the patron saint of selling the picks and shovels during a gold rush. Brannan owned a store, and he was one of the first to confirm the discovery was real. But what did he do first?
He didn't go digging.
No. He went out and bought every single pick, shovel, and pan he could find in the entire region. He cornered the market on mining equipment.
And then he announced the discovery.
Then he runs through the streets of San Francisco, waving a bottle of gold dust, shouting, "Gold! Gold from the American River!" He manufactures the panic, and he's the only one selling the tools to deal with it. Made himself California's first millionaire.
And the actual discoverers, Marshall and Sutter.
Both died broke. Sutter's land was destroyed by squatters looking for gold. Marshall never found another significant deposit. It's the classic curse of the discoverer.
But the rush itself, the 49ers, it transformed America.
It absolutely did. It pulled the center of gravity of the country westward. San Francisco went from a tiny village to a boomtown overnight. And all that new gold, about 750,000 pounds of it, provided the capital that helped fuel America's Industrial Revolution.
And the fever spread. Australia, 1851.
Yeah, a prospector named Edward Hargraves had been in California, came back to Australia, and thought, this landscape looks familiar. Started digging, and bam, another massive rush.
Victoria, I read, produced a third of the world's gold in the 1850s.
Incredible. And it had this huge political impact there, too. The fight over mining licenses led to a rebellion called the Eureka Stockade, which is often seen as the birthplace of Australian democracy.
But the biggest one of all, the one that dwarfed everything else, was South Africa.
1886. The Witwatersrand Basin. This one is different. This is the geological anomaly of all time.
How so?
In California or Australia, you could find nuggets in a river. An individual could strike it rich. In South Africa, the gold wasn't in nuggets. It was microscopic flecks embedded in deep, hard rock reefs miles underground.
So you couldn't just pan for it?
No. The geology dictated the entire economic and social structure. To get this gold, you needed massive industrial operations. You needed huge amounts of capital, heavy machinery, dynamite, chemical processing with cyanide.
You needed corporations.
You needed corporations. And most importantly, because the grade of the ore was actually quite low, you needed incredibly cheap labor to make it profitable.
And that's the origin of the apartheid system.
It's the economic foundation of it. The mine owners created the system of migrant labor, passed laws, and closed compounds where workers were kept, all to drive down labor costs to the absolute minimum.
And the scale of this place.
Yeah.
It's just off the charts.
It's insane. 40%. Just think about that. 40% of all the gold ever mined in all of human history came from this one single geological formation.
So there's a good chance some of the atoms in my ring came from there.
A very, very good chance. And control over this incredible wealth was the fundamental reason for the Second Boer War, the British fighting the Dutch settlers. It was a war for gold.
So by the end of the 19th century, the world is awash in new gold from these rushes. And the major powers decide it's time to create a formal global system.
This brings us to the era of the classical gold standard, roughly 1870 to 1914. This is the period that people who love gold get very nostalgic about.
But the story of how it started is kind of an accident, isn't it?
It is. It starts with Sir Isaac Newton, of all people. In 1717, he was Master of the Mint in England, and his job was to set the official exchange rate between silver and gold.
He got the math wrong.
He got it slightly wrong. He overvalued gold relative to silver, so this thing called Gresham's Law kicked in. Bad money drives out good.
Meaning?
Meaning people hoarded the undervalued metal, silver, and spent the overvalued one, gold. But internationally, merchants sent their silver to the continent where it was worth more and sent gold to England. Over time, all the silver drained out of England and it was left by default on a gold standard.
An accidental gold standard.
Exactly. And by the late 1800s, other major countries like Germany and the US decided to formally join in.
So how did the system actually work in practice?
It was a very rigid set of rules. Every major currency, the dollar, the pound, the franc, was defined as a specific weight of gold. You could literally walk into a bank with a $10 bill and demand the equivalent weight in gold coins, and they had to give it to you.
The paper was just a convenient stand-in A claim check for the real thing.
Precisely. And this created enormous stability. For decades, there was virtually no inflation. It was a golden age for international trade and investment because exchange rates were totally fixed.
Okay, so that's the upside. What was the downside? You called it the golden fetters earlier.
The fetters, yes. The downside is that it puts your domestic economy in a straitjacket. You lose all policy flexibility. Let's say your country starts importing more than it exports.
A trade deficit.
Right. To pay for those excess imports, physical gold has to flow out of your country's vaults and go to the other country.
Okay.
Now, under this system, your money supply is directly tied to your gold reserves. So if gold leaves, your money supply automatically shrinks.
And a shrinking money supply means
Deflation. A recession. Prices fall, wages fall, businesses go bankrupt, people lose their jobs. The system forces a painful recession on your population in order to correct the trade imbalance.
so you can't put money to help people in a downturn. You can't lower interest rates.
You can't do anything. You are a slave to the flow of gold. The stability of the exchange rate is more important than the employment of your citizens. You have to accept the pain.
And that rigid system completely shattered in 1914.
World War I. You can't fight a war on the gold standard. It's too expensive. Governments immediately suspended it so they could print money to pay for tanks and soldiers.
And the result was massive inflation.
And in the case of Germany, hyperinflation that destroyed their society.
Yeah.
After the war, countries tried to go back to gold, but the system was broken. And then came the real test.
The Great Depression.
1929. This is the moment that really seals the case against the gold standard for most economists. When the stock market crashed, people panicked. They wanted something safe. They started pulling their money out of banks in the form of gold coins.
So gold starts draining out of the U.S. banking system.
Exactly. Now, today, what would the Federal Reserve do in that situation?
They'd flood the system with liquidity, lower interest rates to zero, print money to save the banks.
Right. But under the rules of the gold standard, they did the exact opposite. Their prime directive was to protect the nation's gold reserves. So, to stop the gold from leaving, they had to make it more attractive for people to hold dollars. They had to raise interest rates.
Raising interest rates in the middle of a collapsing economy. It's insane.
It was economic suicide. It was like tightening a noose around the neck of the banking system. But they were following the rules of gold. That decision in 1931 is what turned a nasty recession into the Great Depression. They chose the metal over the economy.
Until FDR came in.
FDR in 1933 basically said, "This is madness." He took a pair of scissors and cut the golden fetters. He issued Executive Order 6102, which made it illegal for private citizens to own gold.
He confiscated it.
He did. He forced everyone to turn in their gold coins to the government. Then, once he had all the gold, he devalued the dollar. He changed the official price from about $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce.
Which instantly gave the government more paper dollars for every ounce of gold it held.
Exactly. It was an inflationary move designed to break the back of the deflationary spiral. It freed the U.S. from the straitjacket and allowed them to start funding the New Deal.
So that brings us to the end of World War II. The world is in ruins, except for America.
The U.S. is the only major industrial power left standing, and, crucially, it owns about 2/3 of the entire world's official gold reserves. It's all sitting in Fort Knox.
That's how they get to design the next system.
They do. In 1944, at a conference in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, they create a new global financial architecture. It's kind of a gold standard light.
How did it work?
The U.S. dollar was pegged to gold at that same rate, $35 an ounce. And every other major currency, the British pound, the German mark, the Japanese yen, was pegged to the dollar.
So the dollar becomes the center of the universe, the anchor for the whole system.
It is. And this gave the United States what a French finance minister later called the exorbitant privilege.
The exorbitant privilege. What's that?
It meant the U.S. could just print paper dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia or cars from Germany, and the rest of the world had to accept those dollars as if they were gold itself. We could run huge deficits without consequence.
Because everyone needed dollars to trade with each other.
Exactly. But there was a fatal flaw baked into the system from day one, a mathematical contradiction. It was identified by an economist named Robert Triffin.
The Triffin dilemma?
The Triffin dilemma. He pointed out that for the global economy to grow, it needed more and more dollars to grease the wheels of trade.
So the U.S. had to supply those dollars.
Right. And the only way to do that was to run a trade deficit, to spend more abroad than it earned. But here's the dilemma. As the U.S. printed more and more of these dollars and sent them overseas, the amount of gold sitting in Fort Knox remained the same.
So eventually, The number of foreign-held dollars would be way bigger than the amount of gold we had to back them up.
Precisely. The system only worked as long as nobody called our bluff, as long as nobody tried to cash in their dollars for gold.
And then somebody did.
And somebody did. In the 1960s, the president of France, Charles de Gaulle, got very suspicious. He saw the U.S. printing money to fund the Vietnam War, and he said, this is unfair. This exorbitant privilege has to end.
What did he do?
He started sending the French Navy to New York Harbor to literally exchange their dollar reserves for physical gold bars from the New York Fed and ship them back to Paris.
Sending a warship to pick up your gold. That is a statement.
It was a huge statement, and other countries started to get nervous and do the same. The U.S. gold reserves started to plummet, and by the summer of 1971, the system was at a breaking point.
This is the Nixon shock.
The dam was about to burst. In early August, Britain called and said they wanted to convert $3 billion of their dollars into gold. The U.S. simply couldn't afford to let that happen. It would have triggered a full-blown run on Fort Knox.
So Nixon huddled with his top advisors at Camp David in total secrecy.
Yep. Nixon, his Treasury Secretary John Connally, a young Paul Volcker, they had two choices. Either impose brutal austerity on the U.S. economy to defend the dollar, or sever the link to gold.
And Connally was famously blunt about it.
His attitude towards the Europeans was, it's our currency, but it's your problem. It was a moment of pure American power politics. They decided to cut the cord.
And on Sunday night, August 15th, 1971.
Nixon goes on national television. He interrupts an episode of the Western show Bonanza, which is just the most perfect detail.
It really is.
And he announces that he is temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
Temporarily.
It's been over 50 years. That was the end. It was never coming back.
What did that moment, that speech, actually mean for the world, for money itself?
It meant the gilded thread, the connection that had existed for thousands of years between money and a physical commodity, was severed completely. For the first time in history, all the world's money became fiat money.
Fiat as in by decree.
Yes. It has value simply because the government says it does, and because we all collectively agree to believe it does. Its value is based on trust, not on a pile of shiny rocks in a vault.
It's a shared social construct.
It's a shared hallucination, in a way, a very useful one. It gives central banks the flexibility to fight recessions. But that anchor to physical reality was gone forever.
But gold's story didn't end there. In fact, if you look at the price.
Oh, the free market immediately placed its bet. The price, which had been fixed at $35 an ounce for decades, exploded. It shot up to over $850 by 1980.
And today it's what, around $2,700?
Somewhere around there. The market basically said, okay, we'll use your paper money, but we don't trust it nearly as much as we trust the metal.
And here's the final beautiful irony. The central banks, the ones who issue all this fiat currency.
They'll tell you gold is a barbarous relic, a quote from Keynes. They'll say it has no place in a modern financial system. And yet,
They still hold it.
they hold thousands and thousands of tons of it. In fact, central banks have been buying more gold in the last few years than at any time in decades.
But why? If it's not money anymore, why is it still sitting in the vaults of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England?
Because it's the ultimate insurance policy. It's what you own when you don't trust anything else. As one central banker put it, gold is no one's liability.
What does that mean?
A dollar is a liability of the U.S. government. A bond is a liability of a corporation. Every other financial asset is just a promise from someone else. Gold isn't a promise. It just is. If every government and every bank in the world were to collapse tomorrow, the gold bar would still be a gold bar.
It's the ultimate hedge against chaos.
It's apocalypse insurance. That's its role now.
So let's try to visualize this whole epic story. You mentioned the cube visualization.
Yeah, this is my favorite way to think about it. Because gold is so dense, there's actually not that much of it. If you took every single ounce ever mined in history, every wedding ring, every coin, every bar, and every vault, and you melted it all down into a single solid cube,
How big would it be?
it would measure about 22 meters or 72 feet on each side.
That's it.
That's it. It would fit on a tennis court with room to spare.
All of human history. The Egyptian slaves, the fall of the Aztecs, the Boer War, the California Gold Rush, the Great Depression, all of it. All that greed and beauty and violence and innovation for a cube of metal that fits on a tennis court.
It puts it all in perspective, doesn't it? It really speaks to something deep in human nature, this desire for something permanent in a world where everything fades. Gold is our attempt to grab hold of something immortal.
And the people who actually found it, the James Marshalls and George Harrisons, they rarely got rich.
Almost never. The real money was made by the systems that grew up around it. The bankers, the governments, the Sam Brannans.
So we've moved from gold to paper backed by gold to paper backed by nothing to digital entries on a ledger.
Yeah.
We live in a world of pure abstraction now.
We do. We run on trust in the system. But that 22-meter cube, it's still sitting there. In vaults, in the dark, waiting.
Just in case.
Just in case that trust ever breaks down.
Wow. Well, this has been an incredible journey. I'm honestly never going to look at this ring the same way again. It's not just a ring, it's a piece of a dead star that witnessed the entire story of human civilization.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you so much for walking us through the Gilded Thread.
It was my absolute pleasure.
And thank you all for listening to The Deep Dive. If you enjoyed this, let us know. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into another piece of our world. I'm David.
And I'm Maria.
See you next time.